Happy August, folks, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single Monday right here on the show, I, Graham Jesus Matthews, break down all the content that I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking Bring It to the Table Episode 6 that aired last week after Monday Night Raw. Now, before we get started here, what's on tap for the WWE Network lineup for this month? After watching the WWE Network Spotlight video that went up last week on August 1st, it looks like tonight we got a new table for 3, which is cool. Next week, another new table for 3. One of them, I think, is like the WCW versus NWO. Pretty sure it's Diamond Dallas Page, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman, a.k.a. X-Pac. That's tonight. Next week, unless they change it like they did with July, because this episode of Bring It to the Table was supposed to air back on the 17th, and they changed it. So anyway, I think that's a new table for 3 tonight, another new table for 3 next week. And it's going to feature the Scott Hall DDP one. X-Pac is tonight. What was next week? It was Sting, Ric Flair, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And that was all they had advertised. I mean, they had the Mae Young Classic coming up. They have the Bracketology episode of that. But that's nothing I'll probably cover here on WWE Network and Chill. So that's all I know of for now for the month of August. But anyway, let's get into Bring It to the Table from last week. To start off the episode, we get a clip of JBL dumping JR's barbecue sauce in the garbage. For what reason, I have no idea. There's obviously no real heat here, or no real heat there. Why they did that, completely random. I'm not even sure. But anyway, their first real topic of discussion was the Brock Lesnar-John Jones topic from this past weekend, or last weekend rather, when John Jones, following his victory at UFC that Saturday, called out Brock Lesnar for a fight at UFC 214, saying that what would it feel like to get your ass handed to you by someone 40 pounds lighter than you, or something along those lines. And the whole internet exploded. I didn't see it live. I saw it the next day. It was pretty fucking sweet. Brock Lesnar responded, saying, "Be careful what you wish for," from the Associated Press. So we still have no word as to whether that's going to be official or not. It looks like it will. I'd be surprised, honestly, if it wasn't, because Brock has done both WWE and UFC before. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. But that goes to show that this show, it went up on Monday. That happened 2 days prior. So they must have recorded this either on Sunday or Monday. I thought this was recorded well in advance. Apparently not, because this was new news, obviously. But Corey Graves says that he loves it. He says it's a dream fight, which it is. JBL says that Brock Lesnar is the biggest name out there. That it's the biggest fight that I think UFC could do with someone from outside of their company, other than Floyd Money Mayweather, obviously, coming up in a few weeks. But in regards to someone in the UFC versus someone from outside of the UFC, they also talk about Chris Cyborg and Becky Lynch. We'll talk about that later on. But he's right. I mean, JBL mentioned, they have Ronda Rousey, maybe. I mean, she's not really in the limelight anymore, but beyond Conor McGregor, they don't have too many big names in the UFC other than now the returning John Jones. So to put him up against Brock Lesnar would be fucking sweet. So I do hope that does come to fruition. Alexa Bliss and Sasha Banks, they talk about their real heat. So the weird thing about this show is that they go in and out of kayfabe. So they talk about their storyline issues, but they also talk about there being real bad blood between the two as well. So again, I'm not really sure what to believe. I would honestly believe that there is, just because of based off interaction these two have had. They show a clip of Sasha Banks going off on Alexa Bliss on the Raw Talk show after Great Balls of Fire last month. I'm sure there is some sort of animosity there, but JBL says himself that makes for the best feuds. Look no further than Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart from 20 years ago. But yeah, Corey Graves says that Bliss is doing ratings. She's best for business. She may not be the best wrestler, but she's going to be great in time. I mean, she's great now, but she'll be even better in time, which is scary to think about. So like I said, Peter Rosenberg calls it real heat between the two, and he thinks that should be the SummerSlam match, which it's hard to argue with. I do understand why people would say that, or it should be a triple threat, or even a fatal four-way with Nia Jax. I'm glad it's not. And we're instead getting a traditional one-on-one match for a change. But Rosenberg does take exception to the fact it will be Bayley and Bliss at SummerSlam, and not Banks and Bliss after the bad blood and the unfinished business they have from Great Balls of Fire last month. They talk about Talking Smack getting canceled, something that JBL knows all too familiar with after his own show, Legends with JBL, was canceled not too long ago, earlier this year. He says he's not disappointed it was canceled, if only because it's still around on a monthly basis, and not really even that. I mean, it's only brought back after the SmackDown pay-per-views. Now, whether they bring it back after SummerSlam, it remains to be seen. I would rather have Talking Smack than Raw Talk. There is a big difference there, especially if Daniel Bryan is around. But it's not even really a monthly thing because there's no SmackDown pay-per-view in the month of August. So the next time we get it, after Battleground just recently, is in September, which is like every 2 months, which is kind of ridiculous for a show that was so great. But he does say that he likes the show as a platform, which again, I could not agree more with. I'm sure everyone agrees with that as well. That it was a platform for the superstars of SmackDown to get themselves over. And he even distinctly mentioned the unscripted nature of the show, which was one of the best parts about Talking Smack. That it wasn't always live, but it was unscripted more often than not. And then Corey Graves says it was an uphill battle after 205 Live came around in November, saying that once that came around and that debuted, that premiered back in November, and then Talking Smack was pushed up an hour, or pushed back an hour or whatever, to like the 10:45, 11 o'clock hour, that was really, the writing was on the wall at that point, and that was 6-7 months ago. And I think even JBL said, or Corey said, it might have been Rosenberg who said, I think it was Rosenberg who had said, he kind of spoke for the fans that there are some people out there, myself included, that would like to see 205 Live get canceled before Talking Smack, but that's just me. They talk about the Mae Young Classic very, very briefly. They just really mention it and nothing more. They talk about Ronda Rousey coming to the WWE and being spotted at the Mae Young Classic. Again, they don't really go into detail. They just mention it. I doubt Ronda Rousey is coming to a full-fledged deal with the WWE anytime soon. I don't know if she's going to fight again. It's been about a year at this point. But it remains to be seen. I doubt she's coming to WWE on a full-time contract ever. I mean, maybe on a celebrity part-time basis, but never on a full-time contract. Anyway, they talk about the 4 horsewomen of MMA, UFC, whatever, versus the 4 horsewomen of the WWE, and how they kind of went face-to-face, whatever. All 8 women came face-to-face. I think all 8 of them encountered each other at the Mae Young Classic tapings last month. And I think one of the analysts theory, either Graves or JBL, might have been JBL, mentioned the possibility of a WrestleMania match. It might have been Rosenberg, for all I remember. I don't know, for all I know. But it got me thinking that now that all the women in the 4 horsewomen of the WWE, of NXT, whatever, Sasha Banks, Bayley, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte, are now all baby faces, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I mean, one of them is Roderick Strong's wife, and Ronda Rousey's on good terms with the company. I think a third one might have even competed in the Mae Young Classic, so they have an in with the company if they can go that route. That would be pretty sweet. It would be weird to see Sasha and Charlotte teaming up so soon after feuding, and even Bayley and Charlotte. I mean, all 3 of these women have bad blood dating back years, so it would be weird to see them team up. But that aside, though, it would be cool. I mean, they didn't really mention that. That was something I thought of myself, but seeing those 4 women of the UFC versus the 4 horsewomen of the WWE would be pretty sweet. They talked briefly about Chris Cyborg and Becky Lynch, like I talked about earlier, and the possibility of that match happening at SummerSlam, as has been teased, on SmackDown recently and on Twitter and whatnot. Corey Graves says he would want to see the match. He would want to see them mix it up. And JBL says the match probably won't happen, but it's really just a way for the UFC stars and other celebrities and whatnot to build their platform, quote unquote, whatever. Directly referencing Conor McGregor and how he went off in the WWE locker room about a year ago, calling them all pussies and all this other shit. Obviously, nothing came of it. It was really just to build his own brand, and you can't blame the guy. He worked the entire wrestling world. Everyone thought he was serious, and hell, maybe he was serious, but the primary reason as to why he did that was to elicit a reaction. And maybe that's what Chris Cyborg is doing. I don't know if we get the match. I doubt it, but it would be pretty cool. They talk about the WWE Book of Rules, which I actually got as a birthday gift not too long ago. I'm in the middle of reading it right now. They don't really talk about the book itself. They do talk about whether Rosenberg questions Graves and JBL, whether there is an unwritten rule or like an actual book or something along those lines, like a guideline, so to speak, of whether there are words and words that cannot be said on WWE TV as a commentator, which is very accurate because he is right, and there is. We've seen the proof for ourselves. We've seen scripts being revealed, posted online, leaked, and shit like that. So we do know it's out there. JBL and Graves say that it doesn't exist. That would be preposterous. It must be tongue-in-cheek because that's obviously bullshit, because there obviously is. But it was funny because Peter Rosenberg brought up the fact, I did not catch on to this, I was half paying attention to the show, that the word structure was used 64 times during the course of the Punjabi prison match between Jinder Mahal and Randy Orton a couple of weeks ago at Battleground, which blew my mind. I thought he was exaggerating, but they actually went through every single time that structure was said by either Tom Phillips, Byron Saxton, or JBL on the SmackDown pay-per-view a few weeks ago, which blew my mind, but they counted them all up, and they were right. They did say that word 64 times, which is fucking ridiculous. Another Vince McMahon-ism that they keep on hammering the same word over and over and over in their head. Like, you can't say some certain words, but because of that, you're kind of limited in terms of what you can say on this show as a commentator. So you're forced to say the same word over and over and over. It's not a cage, it's a structure. Whatever. They talk about Enzo getting kicked off a bus by other talent, specifically Roman Reigns. I don't know if they brought that up. It was Roman Reigns in the report that they said it was him. So I'm not sure why they excluded his name specifically, but it was apparently him leading the locker room. JBL brought up Wrestler's Court, which is a pretty well-known thing by this point. Now, guys that were hazed or were put in Wrestler's Court, whatever, never made it except for The Miz, which is another well-known story by this point. Corey Graves says that Enzo is himself inside and outside of the ring. So who you see on TV is who Enzo is in reality. And because of that, he rubs people the wrong way, which is not really all that hard to imagine. They didn't reference it. This did take place after this happened, so it's not like it didn't happen yet. But there was that weird-ass report that went up about Enzo being in a strip club and how he was a total dick to one of the women there. Something super fucking bizarre. It didn't really get too much mainstream coverage, nor should it have, but I thought for sure they would bring that up here, or even joke about it. They didn't, but it was interesting to see them say and hear them talk about what the future holds for Enzo in WWE, and I think Corey and JBL agree that he should be on 205 Live. That would be interesting. In my opinion, it's kind of hard to match him up against guys like Neville and Cedric Alexander and guys of that stature, but that's just my opinion. We talk about Jason Jordan and how JBL thinks he has incredible potential. Graves even says he is a future world champion in this company, but says he needs more personality, which I absolutely agree with coming off that. It wasn't a bad segment, but a very bland segment with The Miz on Miz TV last week. Miz was great, obviously, per usual. Jason Jordan needs an injection of personality. He comes across great in his matches, like with the short spurts of energy and intensity and whatnot. But in promo-wise, the guy is very vanilla. So maybe we see him start to come out of his shell in time. It's not like he was a great talker during his American Alpha days, so I guess only time will tell. But JBL puts immense pressure on the guy in saying that anything less than becoming a world champion for Jason Jordan is a failure. He'd be a failure if he does not become a world champion. And in a way, he's right. I mean, the guy's got the entire world in his hands. Not to steal from Bray Wyatt here or the famous song, but he's got the whole world in his hands here. He's got the rocket strapped to his back. He's the illegitimate son of the Raw GM Kurt Angle. And he's also a great wrestler. I mean, I know he's not the best mic guy in the world, but hopefully that improves in time. So he's got every tool necessary to become a future world champ on this show. And if he doesn't, I think JBL might be right. He'd be considered a failure. And the final thing here they talk about is save it for the pay-per-view. No, there's a couple things here. I'm sorry. That was just the end of my page in the document. They talk about a couple more topics here. Saving things for the pay-per-view. JBL questions why people are mad about the fact that John Cena and Shinsuke Nakamura wasn't saved for a pay-per-view. I'm one of those people that thinks that it should have been saved for even a B-level pay-per-view, like a Battleground or a SummerSlam. And to do that match, to build up the fucking Nakamura, or to build up a Cena Mahal match at SummerSlam, is stupid. To build to a match with Jinder Mahal to do Cena Nakamura on TV is dumb. It didn't piss me off. It didn't make me mad, but it's one of those things that just they could be doing better. But anyway, Corey Graves says that Cena Nakamura is so good that they're going to buy the network, which is like his theory, I guess, that if the match is so good, I'm going to buy the WWE Network. Like, that's... I could see what he's saying, but I don't agree with it. I think that if you put that type of match on a B-level pay-per-view, people will buy the network to see it. People are going to buy the network regardless, but I think there's a bigger chance that someone buys the network if a great match is happening on the network on pay-per-view. Like, why would you buy the network if you had a great match on SmackDown and all the shit happens on pay-per-view? Like, Battleground happened on pay-per-view. The show fucking sucked, but SmackDown was great the next day or 2 days later, whatever. So why would you buy the network? So I kind of see what he's saying, but I don't agree. They talk about wrestling podcasts, and there being way too many of them. Hopefully they're not talking about mine, but Corey Graves only says that he says he only listens to Eric Bischoff's podcast and Bruce Pritchard's podcast. I heard a little bit of Eric Bischoff's when I was hanging out with John a few weeks ago. It is good. I wouldn't listen to it on the regular. I already listen to like Stone Cold's and Jericho's, and that's about it for wrestler podcasts. But I've also heard Bruce Pritchard's is pretty damn good. So, and JBL agrees. He loves Bruce Pritchard's. And then they show the picture of him and JBL and Bruce Pritchard on the fucking scooter holding hands or whatever, which we got a few months ago. Or I think in the last episode maybe. Then they transition into talking about the Shield reunion. JBL does not think it would benefit Roman Reigns that he's the real draw as he is right now. He was not a draw in the Shield days, but on his own, people pay to see him get his ass kicked because they boo him. They want to see him get beat. So he's a draw on his own, not with the Shield. Graves, rather, loves the potential of an Ambrose-Rollins pairing, which I agree with. I think Reigns shouldn't get involved at some point if you're going to have a full-fledged Shield reunion, especially if the guy's on the same fucking show. How can you not have a Shield reunion without all three guys when they're on the same show? That's just dumb to me. But he is curious, Corey says, as to whether fans would receive Roman differently if he was with the Shield. Which is true. It seems like traditionally whenever Roman is with, a Dean Ambrose or a Seth Rollins, he is getting cheered more than he's booed. So I guess that's something to experiment with in the future. Speaking of Roman Reigns, the final topic they talk about is Roman Reigns and John Cena, the possibility of that match happening, the back and forth they had on Twitter not too long ago. Corey Graves wants to see the match, but he does say John Cena has one foot out the door, and that while he's gone, doing all the part-time stuff, doing movies, shows, talk shows, stuff like that, Roman Reigns is the one leading the charge into the future, leading this new era. JBL thinks that Cena's here for a while. He's not leaving. He's still the biggest name in the entire company, the biggest moneymaker in the entire company. And they question whether we might see it at WrestleMania 34. I think we will. I think we will get Cena and Reigns at WrestleMania 34. And it's a match that I would want to see. I'm not the biggest John Cena or even Roman Reigns fan in the world. I like both guys. They're not my favorite, but it's still a match that I would want to see. Not only because they're, heat on Twitter and whatever, but because it's a match we've never seen before. And it's the battle of the two biggest names really in the company, aside from Brock Lesnar. Really a passing of the torch kind of thing. So, despite the fact that Roman's already beaten like Triple H and The Undertaker and all these other guys. So, one can argue the torch has already been passed, but that would be the official passing of the torch if the match was to happen, and I think it will at WrestleMania 34. So that does it, guys, for bringing it to the table. Episode 6, as seen on the WWE Network last week after Raw. It's available now, right now, on demand on the WWE Network. Like I said, next week we'll probably be talking about the new Table for 3 airing tonight after Raw, featuring DDP. Who are the other two guys? Scott Hall and X-Pac. So looking forward to watching and reviewing that. In the meantime, in between time, guys, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, share the video. All that stuff is amazingly appreciated. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys, and I'll catch your ass down the road.